I was sweeping the floor when my daughter-in-law yelled, "You're not the maid, you're just a parasite." My son didn't even look up from his phone. The next morning, they left a box of my clothes outside with a note, "Do not come back." I slept in a shelter that night. But when their house was raided weeks later, they finally understood what I'd been quietly preparing. I'm Ruth, 64 years old. I never thought I'd be telling this story. I used to be proud of how I raised my son, how I kept our home together after my husband died. I thought if I gave enough, stayed humble, and loved hard, I'd be okay. I was wrong. When my husband Stan passed away from a stroke in 2017, everything in my world shifted. He was the steady one. He handled the money, the hard decisions. I handled the home. I took care of Brian while Stan worked 2 jobs for years. We never had much, but we had enough. We saved. We planned. After Stan died, I tried to stay strong. Brian helped at first. He'd call, visit, take me to the store. But when he met Alyssa, that all stopped. She didn't like me. I felt it right away. I'd been around long enough to know when someone wants you gone. Still, I tried. I baked her favorite peach cobbler. I watched their dog when they traveled. I never raised my voice, even when she made digs about my clothes or the smell of my arthritis cream. In 2020, during the height of the pandemic, I lost my part-time job at the local library. I asked Brian if I could stay with them for a while, just until I got back on my feet. He agreed. Alyssa didn't say no, but her face said everything. They had a 3-bedroom house in Sacramento. I took the smallest room. I brought 2 suitcases and a small box of keepsakes. That was it. I cooked when they worked late. I cleaned the kitchen, wiped down the counters, vacuumed. I stayed in my lane. I didn't want to be a burden. But to Alyssa, I was always too much. It started small. "Don't leave your teacup in the sink, Ruth." Then, "Don't touch the washer settings, I have delicates in there." Then it became every day. I was either in the way, or too quiet, or too helpful. Nothing was ever right. One day, I was sweeping the living room. Just sweeping. Alyssa walked in with her drink and said, loud and clear, "You're not the maid, Ruth. You're just a parasite." I stopped moving. I looked at her, then at Brian. He was sitting right there. On his phone. He didn't even lift his head. Didn't say a single word. I don't even remember how I finished that day. I felt like I wasn't even in the room anymore. Like I'd turned invisible. That night, I didn't eat dinner. I stayed in the room and cried as quiet as I could. I didn't want to give her the satisfaction of hearing me. The next morning, I got up early. I walked outside to check the mail. There was a cardboard box on the porch. It had my slippers, a few of my shirts, the photo of me and Brian at his high school graduation, even my Bible. On top of the box was a note in Alyssa's handwriting. "Do not come back." The door was locked behind me. I stood there with the box in my arms. I looked up and down the street, but nobody was around. I didn't know where to go. I didn't have any friends left nearby. My sister had passed. My church had moved online and I didn't have internet. So I just walked. I walked for hours. My knees hurt so bad I thought I was going to collapse. I found a women's shelter downtown. They gave me a cot and a blanket. That night, I lay there between 2 strangers, listening to the hum of a vending machine and the quiet crying of a woman across the room. I stared at the ceiling and something inside me cracked. I wasn't angry yet. Not really. I was more stunned. Numb. But then I started thinking. I gave Brian my life. I gave him everything. And now he let his wife throw me out like garbage. He didn't even say goodbye. He didn't even send a message after. That's when something inside me began to change. I decided I wouldn't stay down. A few days later, I remembered something. Stan and I had bought a little piece of land in Placer County back in the late 90s. It was cheap, dry land back then. Worth almost nothing. But Stan always said, land is land. One day it'll mean something. I hadn't thought about it in years. But when I checked, I found out the county had rezoned the area. Developers wanted to build there now. My land had value. A lot of it. I went to the public library, used a computer, and searched for a real estate lawyer. Found one named Patrice. She was sharp and didn't waste time. I told her what I wanted. I sold the land, set up a private LLC, got a new bank account, and bought myself a small home in Rockland. 2 bedrooms. Clean. Peaceful. Then I did something else. I hired a private investigator. Cost me a few thousand, but I had enough. I gave him Alyssa's name. I told him, tell me everything. And he did. Turns out, Alyssa was working with some man named Cody. They were flipping houses, on paper, at least. In reality, they were pulling money from equity loans, using Brian's name and credit. The loans were late. Payments were overdue. Some of the money was even linked to a fake rental company they created. Illegal stuff. I brought all of it to Patrice. She helped me file an anonymous tip to the feds. All legit. No trail back to me. Then I waited. It didn't take long. For weeks later, I got a call from Marcia, an old friend who still lived near Brian and Alyssa. She said the house was swarming with agents. Black SUVs. Uniformed officers. A moving truck showed up an hour later. Alyssa was screaming. Brian was in cuffs. All their accounts were frozen. Their house was seized. I didn't cheer. I didn't laugh. But I felt something solid return to my chest. A feeling I hadn't felt in a long time. I was no longer invisible. And I wasn't done. I thought that would be the end of it. But I was wrong. After the raid, things got quiet for a couple of weeks. I kept to myself in my little Rockland house. I bought a second-hand coffee maker, planted marigolds out front, and sat in the sun with a crossword most mornings. For once, I wasn't walking on eggshells. I didn't have to listen for footsteps or whispered insults behind a bedroom door. Then, one morning, I got a letter. No return address, but the handwriting was familiar. Brian. The letter was short. Mom. I know you had something to do with this. Alyssa's gone. She left the state. They froze my accounts. I have nothing. Why would you do this? You're my mother. He ended it with I hope you're happy. I sat at my kitchen table and read it 3 times. Not one word about what he did to me. Not one apology. Not even a real question. Just blame. That's when I realized he wasn't just broken, he was still under her spell. Even after everything. I didn't respond. 2 days later, he showed up at my door. He looked awful. His beard had grown and patchy, his eyes were sunken. His hoodie was dirty. He knocked once, hard, then just stood there with his hands in his pockets. I opened the door a crack. Mom, he said. We need to talk. No, you need to leave, I said, keeping the chain on. Alyssa set me up. You don't know the whole story, he said. She put stuff in my name. I didn't know. You didn't know she threw me out? I asked. You didn't hear her call me a parasite? Or did you just not care? His face twitched. He looked down. I was trying to keep the peace, he said. You kept the peace by throwing your own mother out like trash, I said. He started to say something, but I shut the door. That night, someone egged my house. My driveway, my porch, even my car window. I called the police, filed a report. No cameras caught anything, but I knew it was him, or someone he sent. He was unraveling. But he still didn't understand that I wasn't the same woman he left on the porch with a cardboard box. I reached out to Patrice again. I told her everything. She nodded and said, "Let's get ahead of it." Within a week, we had a restraining order filed. I changed my locks, upgraded my alarm, joined the neighborhood watch group. But Brian didn't stop. He started showing up at places I went to. The grocery store. The church parking lot. Once I saw him sitting in the back of the library, just watching. I pretended not to see him, but my hands were shaking so bad I couldn't even hold a book. The final straw was when he tried to get into my bank account. The bank flagged it. Said someone tried to access it from a known IP tied to Brian's name. I froze everything. Called Patrice again. She said it was identity fraud and that we could file charges. That's when I made a choice. I'd spent months trying to clean up the mess they made. I was tired of hiding. Brian needed to learn that betrayal has consequences, even if it comes from your own blood. So I called someone from Stan's past. His cousin, Joe. Joe ran a private security firm now, and he owed Stan a big favor. He said he'd help. Not just to scare Brian, but to build a case. We started tracking Brian's movements. Every message, every late-night visit to shady addresses, every attempt to access my life without my permission. Joe had a contact at the DA's office. A quiet man who didn't ask unnecessary questions. Within 3 weeks, we had enough to charge Brian with fraud, harassment, and attempted identity theft. When the papers were served, he came to my house again. This time he wasn't yelling. He was crying. He stood at my gate and sobbed like a child. "Mom, please. I've lost everything. I can't go to jail." "You should have thought of that when you let her turn you into a coward," I said. "I'm still your son," he whispered. I looked at him through the iron bars and said, "Not anymore." Then I turned and walked inside. But I wasn't done yet. There was still one person left, Alyssa. And I had a plan for her too. After the papers were served to Brian, I thought I'd finally feel peace. But there was no peace, not yet. I still woke up at night sometimes, sweating, with that memory of her voice in my ear, "You're just a parasite." That voice still lived in my head. Alyssa's voice. Cold. Mocking. Confident that she'd never face any consequences. And in a way, she hadn't. She skipped town before the raid hit full force. Brian said she left the state, but I didn't believe that. Alyssa was too smart to just disappear. She was hiding. Planning. And I was tired of waiting. Joe helped me track down a few of her old online profiles. She'd scrubbed most of her social media, but there was one account under her maiden name, Dover. And she'd made a mistake. She liked a photo from a boutique opening in Santa Monica 2 weeks ago. Patrice had a contact in the area who worked in civil litigation. I sent the photo, a known alias, and copies of her fraudulent loan activity. The contact got back to me fast. She's living under her old name. New apartment. New business registration. She hadn't vanished. She'd just rebranded. Her new operation? Some online course nonsense about building real estate wealth through creative finance. She was calling herself a coach. Selling packages for $999 a pop to desperate people who didn't know any better. It was the same scam with new lipstick. That's when I made a decision. No more passive watching. No more hoping someone else would clean it up. I was going after her. Patrice and I built a civil suit. Fraud, elder abuse, financial manipulation, and slander. We gathered evidence, her emails where she listed me as a dependent expense on a falsified tax document, screenshots from a message board where she bragged about cleaning house and getting rid of the old lady, and her new online course materials, which included entire sections copied word for word from real estate books she didn't write. I wanted it all exposed. But I didn't just want her arrested. I wanted her reputation ruined. The way she ruined mine when she threw me out like I was dirt. So we launched 2 attacks at once, the legal one through Patrice, and the public one through an anonymous whistleblower campaign. I sent her course materials to every real estate watchdog group I could find. Reddit threads. Real estate forums. Consumer alert websites. People started asking questions. Her name started showing up in scam warnings. One by one, her clients started demanding refunds. Her online reviews tanked. Then, the big one hit. One of the people she scammed turned out to be a small-time YouTuber who made videos exposing frauds. He made a 20-minute takedown video titled, "This real estate coach scammed my family, here's proof." It went viral. Her business collapsed in under a week. But I still wasn't done. We finally served her in Santa Monica. She opened the door smiling, probably thinking it was another package delivery. Then she saw the man in the suit holding the envelope. Her face dropped. I wasn't there, but Joe was. He stood on the sidewalk and watched. He said she looked right past the papers and started scanning the street, like she knew I was watching. She was right. After that, her lawyer tried to settle. Lowball offer. No apology. Just money to avoid drama. I told Patrice no. I didn't want a quiet payout. I wanted it on record. Every lie. Every forged paper. Every insult. Every time she used my name to make herself rich while calling me worthless to my face. Brian tried to contact me again during the process. He said he was getting help, that he was going to therapy. He asked if I could consider dropping the charges against him just so he can rebuild. I told him, I already rebuilt. Alone. Now it's your turn. He didn't reply after that. The court date was coming. Alyssa thought she could run. She thought she could rebrand. But I was still here. And this time I had the power. The court date came fast. Faster than I expected. It was a warm Monday morning in downtown Los Angeles. The courthouse was busy, like always. Lawyers with their rolling briefcases, people holding files close to their chests like shields. I sat on the wooden bench outside the courtroom, Patrice by my side. She was calm, collected, had that same no-nonsense look she always wore. I was nervous. My hands were cold. My breath felt tight. But I wasn't afraid. Not anymore. Alyssa walked in 10 minutes before the hearing. She was dressed like she was going to brunch, not court. White blouse, big sunglasses, heels that clicked too loud. She smiled when she saw me. Not warm, just smug. But the smile slipped when she saw the file Patrice handed to the clerk. 211 pages. Evidence. Every lie, every forgery, every stolen dollar. Every time she wrote me off like trash. It was all in there. When the judge entered, the room went still. He was older. Sharp eyes. Didn't waste time. He looked at the file. Read the opening statement. Then looked directly at Alyssa. Ms. Dover. You've been accused of financial fraud, identity theft, elder abuse, and tax fraud. You are also the subject of a federal investigation tied to housing loan scams. Do you understand the seriousness of these charges? Alyssa stood. Tried to smile again. Your Honor, this is all a misunderstanding. This woman has been upset with me for years. She's trying to ruin my name. The judge raised a hand. Sit down. And that was the tone for the rest of the day. We presented everything. Emails she sent from my son's account without him knowing. Messages where she mocked me. The video clips of her course, plagiarized word for word. Tax records with my name forged. Even the security footage of her assistant withdrawing cash from an account under my name. Alyssa tried to object, interrupt, play the victim. But the judge wasn't buying it. He called for a short recess. When we returned, he looked her straight in the face. You used this woman's identity, property, and credit to build your business while openly humiliating her. You forged documents. You committed fraud. This court finds you liable in full for damages, and refers this case to the district attorney's office for criminal prosecution. Alyssa turned pale. For the first time, she looked afraid. I was awarded every cent she'd taken, and then some. The judge ordered her to pay restitution, attorney fees, and punitive damages. Her accounts were frozen. Her business license revoked. She was to be taken into custody for further questioning the same day. As she was led out of the courtroom in cuffs, she looked over her shoulder at me. Still no apology. Just shock. Like she never believed this day would come. But the story didn't end there. Brian was next. He had his own hearing a few weeks later. I didn't attend. I didn't need to. He was charged with reckless endangerment of an elder, failure to report fraud, and attempted access to protected accounts. The judge gave him a deal: probation, community service, and mandatory therapy. If he broke any part of it, he'd face jail time. He sent me one last letter. You were right, Mom. I was weak. I should have protected you. I let her make me something I wasn't. I don't expect you to forgive me. I just want you to know I'm sorry. I kept the letter. I didn't respond. I forgave him in my heart. But I didn't invite him back into my life. Now it's been 6 months. I still live in Rockland. My garden is blooming, lavender, marigolds, tomatoes growing in little rows. I joined a book club. I even started volunteering at a food pantry. Sometimes, I think back to the night I slept in the shelter. That cold cot. The way I felt like nothing. Like my life had been ripped out from under me. But now? I wake up each day knowing I fought back. That I didn't let cruelty win. They threw me out like garbage. But I rebuilt from the ground up. And in the end, they were the ones who lost everything. Justice wasn't fast. It wasn't easy. But it was mine.